Welcome to Midnight Tales. Here you will discover new stories, profound lessons, and fantastic adventures. Remember to support us by subscribing to the channel and activating the notification bell. Now, make yourself comfortable, close your eyes. Let's begin the journey. Chapter 9: The Stone That Remembers. The following day dawned without a sound, not a rustle, not a breath of wind, only a clear light gliding over the surface of the island like a feather dropped from a distracted sky. Nikos woke up feeling different than usual. It was as if something was calling him, not with words, but with a soft, gentle presence, like the sea when it wants to be heard. When he left the house, his grandfather Philon was already there, sitting on the large flat rock. He seemed to be meditating, but his eyes were open, looking at the ground beneath him. "Today," he said softly, "we will learn from the stone." Nikos was confused for a moment. He had listened to the wind, the water, the shadows. But a stone, it seemed the quietest element of all. "What can a stone teach?" he asked. Philon calmly stood up and motioned for him to follow. They walked along a little used path, one that almost no one uses anymore. Stones were scattered everywhere, all smooth, polished by time, as if the entire island had been built on a large natural mosaic. They reached a small plateau. There, in the center, was a stone larger than the others, round and perfectly smooth. It looked like the back of a sleeping turtle. "Sit down," said Philon. Nikos sat down next to the stone. The surface was warm, as if it had absorbed the calm of the sun. "This stone," said his grandfather, "has been here long before me, long before you, long before the island had a name. Yet it has never complained. It has never asked for anything. It has only endured." The boy touched the stone with his fingers. It was solid, immovable, reassuring. "But what does it mean to endure?" he asked. "It doesn't mean fighting," replied Philon. "It means staying true to yourself. Even when the wind changes, even when the rain falls, even when time wants to change you." His grandfather sat down slowly, positioning himself in front of Nikos. "Many people," he continued, "think that strength means always moving, always doing, always changing. But ancient philosophy also taught this. There is strength in standing still. There is wisdom in stillness." The stone, motionless and patient, seemed to listen to those words with them. "Look at the stone, Nikos. It doesn't try to be anything else. It doesn't want more. It accepts what life brings, and for this very reason it remains." A soft silence settled between them. In the distance, the sea breathed slowly. A bird uttered a short call, like a gentle note. Everything seemed suspended in a peace that asked for nothing. Philon closed his eyes. Sometimes in life there will be moments when you feel shaken. Moments when everything around you changes too quickly. When that happens, remember this stone. Remember that you can remain still, and that by remaining still you lose nothing. On the contrary, you find yourself. Nikos placed his hand on the stone. He felt its quiet warmth, its silent strength. And he understood, for the first time, that there are lessons that are not learned through words, but through presence. "Grandfather," he whispered, "I think this stone knows more than I do." "It's possible," laughed Philon, with a laugh as light as the wind. "It has had much more time to observe the world." The sun began to set slowly, tinging the hill with a warm orange. Nikos lay down next to the stone, watching the sky change color. He felt a new kind of calm within himself, a calm, solid, as if a piece of that rock had entered his thoughts. After a long moment, Philon got up. "Come, Nikos. We've learned enough for today. Tomorrow, we'll listen to the weather." Nikos followed him along the path, turning one last time toward the large rock. It seemed to smile, or maybe it was just the play of light. In any case, the boy knew he would return, because some lessons, the best ones, need time to blossom. Chapter 10. Time That Breathes. The following day dawned with an even deeper silence than usual. There was no wind, no bird song, not even the slightest rustling of leaves. It was as if the whole island had held its breath, waiting. Nikos awoke from a deep sleep, feeling lighter than usual. He opened his eyes slowly and stared at the ceiling of his room, where the morning light formed small golden shapes that seemed to move on their own. When he came out, Philon was standing by the door, as if he had been there for a long time. He didn't speak right away. His gaze was fixed on the horizon, where the sun was rising with an almost ceremonial slowness. "Today," he finally said, "we will learn from time." Nikos wasn't sure what to expect. Time was something no one could touch, hear, or stop. Yet, in his grandfather's words, it seemed almost like a living presence. They walked to a place on the island that Nikos had never seen before, a small valley hidden between two gentle hills. The ground was covered with fine grass, soft as velvet, and in the center stood a solitary tree with a wide, leafy canopy, full of an ancient tranquility. "Sit down," said Philon, choosing the shade of the tree. Nikos sat down next to him. The silence of the valley was different from the other silences he had heard on the island. It was not an empty silence, but a full one, dense, even warm. "This is the place where time passes more slowly," said his grandfather. His voice seemed part of that silence, not an interruption. "Why?" asked Nikos softly. Philon ran his hand over the bark of the tree. "Because here, for generations, men have come only when they needed to understand something that cannot be understood quickly." Nikos listened. He felt his breathing slow down. His thoughts, usually lively, now moved like slow clouds in the sky. "Time," continued his grandfather, "is not an enemy as many believe. It does not chase us. It does not judge us. It simply accompanies us. It breathes with us." Nikos looked at his hands on his knees. He noticed small details he had never seen before: the fine lines on his skin, a healed scratch, a grain of sand left over from his visit to the beach. It was as if everything had suddenly found a different rhythm. "Many people live as if time were a river carrying them away," said his grandfather. "But the ancient philosophers said that when you learn to breathe with time, you discover that it is a companion, not a current." The wind finally picked up, as gentle as a sigh, causing the grass to move in slow waves. The tree above them dropped a leaf, which fell to the ground without haste. "Look at that leaf," said Philon. Nikos followed it with his eyes until it landed next to his foot. "It could have fallen faster," explained his grandfather. "It could have spun around. It could have been carried away by the wind. Instead, it chose the easiest path. It followed its own time." The boy remained silent for a long moment. The world around him seemed to move at such a gentle pace that it almost made him forget that time was still passing. "Grandfather," he murmured, "sometimes it seems to me that time passes too quickly." Philon nodded. "That's because you try to run after it. When you listen to it instead, you discover that it moves at the pace you choose." Nikos closed his eyes. He breathed in slowly. He felt his body become heavier, as if he were getting closer to the ground. At the same time, his mind felt lighter, as if it were rising toward the sky. "Today's lesson is simple," said Philon, "but it takes a lifetime to learn. You mustn't chase after time. Let time walk beside you." A long silence followed. Nikos wasn't sleepy, but he felt such a deep peace that he could have sat there for hours without moving a finger. "When are we going back?" he asked softly. His grandfather smiled. "Time will tell." They got up slowly and resumed their walk. The sun was a little higher, but it seemed to have taken an eternity to rise. Or perhaps it was they who had changed their pace. As they walked, Nikos understood something he had never thought of before, that time is not a river to be crossed, but a companion to be known. And that thought remained with him, sweet and light, like another leaf falling to the ground. Chapter 11. The House of Quiet Memories. The morning arrived like a gentle wave that didn't want to wake anyone up. Light entered Nikos's room on tiptoe, caressing the white walls with a soft warmth. The boy rose slowly, still enveloped in a sleep that seemed unwilling to leave him completely. When he left the house, he found Philon walking unhurriedly along the path that led to the interior of the island. He wasn't waiting for him on the big rock, as usual, and that alone was a sign that the day would bring something different. "Come with me," said Philon, in a tone that was neither urgent nor quiet, just full of meaning. They walked through a field of tall grass, moved by a light wind that seemed to brush the world with an invisible brush. The sky was clear but not too bright, a veiled blue, as if the day had decided to show itself delicately. "Where are we going?" asked Nikos, but not with impatient curiosity, more with respect. "To a place I rarely show," replied his grandfather, "the House of Quiet Memories." The name gave rise to a silence deeper than the previous one. The boy followed his grandfather to a small stone building hidden between two large carob trees. It was simple, windowless, with a light wooden door. It almost seemed like a natural extension of the earth, as if it had grown there on its own. Philon placed a hand on the door. "This house holds memories, not objects, but moments." They went inside. The interior was very different from what Nikos had imagined. There were no chests, no books, no scrolls. Instead, there were small lights suspended in midair, like slow-moving fireflies. Each one glowed with a different color, soft and pulsating. "Each light," said Philon, "is a memory that does not want to be forgotten. It is not a painful memory, nor a noisy memory. It is a quiet memory." Nikos walked among the lights, feeling a gentle warmth around him. A pale light caught his attention. It was not bright, but it seemed to breathe. "Can I get closer?" he asked. "If it calls you," replied Philon, "yes." The boy reached out his hand. The light approached him, slowly, like a trusting animal, and when it touched his skin, Nikos saw something in his mind. A child, perhaps 3 or 4 years old, laughing under an olive tree, the sea in the background. A large hand lifting the child and spinning him in the air, accompanied by deep laughter. Nikos opened his eyes. His heart was beating slowly but strongly. "It was you," he said softly. "Wasn't it?" Philon nodded, sitting down on a stone stool. "A memory of mine. One of the first I decided to keep here." "Why did you choose it?" asked the boy. "Because memory is not just for remembering what hurt us," replied his grandfather. "It is also for remembering what built us." This house helps me remember who I was, to better understand who I am now. A larger golden light swayed near them. Philon looked up and smiled. That, he explained, is the memory of the day I realized that every person has their own rhythm, and that I can't force anyone to walk at my pace. Nikos remained silent. He understood that his grandfather wasn't just teaching lessons, he was showing parts of himself with the same calmness with which one opens a precious book. "Can I keep memories here too?" he asked. Philon shook his head gently. "No, this house is for those who have walked long enough to know which memories to keep and which to let go." Then he added, "But one day, when you are ready, you can build your own house, a house where you can keep what has made you yourself." Nikos took a deep breath. He felt a new awareness within himself, that memory is not a burden to bear, but a garden to cultivate, and that in that garden only quiet memories bloom. When they left the house, the daylight seemed brighter, as if the world had been polished from within. "Tomorrow," said Philon, closing the door with slow, respectful gestures, "we will talk about the last thing you learn as you grow up: choice." The wind gently moved the leaves of the carob trees, as if to accompany their exit, and Nikos realized that his journey on the island was halfway through. But it was becoming deeper every day. Chapter 12. The Path of Subtle Choices. The morning dawned over Callipolis with the grace of a curtain slowly rising. The light did not invade the world, it enveloped it. The air smelled of fresh thyme, and an attentive silence seemed to follow every movement of nature. Nikos woke up thinking about his grandfather's words. "Tomorrow we will talk about the last thing you learn as you grow up: choice." It was a simple word, yet it seemed big to him, like a door leading to something still unknown. When he reached Philon near the flat rock, he found him with a light cloak over his shoulders and an olive stick in his hand. It was rare for him to carry it with him. He usually only used it when the lesson of the day was important or delicate. "Today we will walk a little further than usual," said his grandfather. His voice was calm, but it had a tone that suggested caution. They crossed a pine grove where the light fell in thin threads like golden fabric. The sound of their footsteps was soft, muffled by the needles fallen on the ground. Every now and then Philon would stop, not to rest, but to observe a detail: a slanted stone, a leaf lighter than the others, a bend in the path that seemed to change shape in the sun. "This is an important day, Nikos," he said as they continued, "because today you will not learn from an element, but from yourself." The boy felt a small tremor in his chest. Not from fear, from anticipation. They finally arrived at a place where the path split in two. The two roads slowly diverged among the trees, like two thoughts taking different directions. One was a little brighter, the other slightly more shaded, but neither was threatening. "Here we are," said Philon. "Today's lesson is here." Nikos looked at the two paths. Which one should we take? His grandfather sat down on a rock and pointed to the fork in the road. This is a simple choice, yet it is one of the most important. "Why?" asked the boy, trying not to be overwhelmed by the quiet that surrounded him. "Because no one can tell you which way to go." Philon rested his stick on his knees. "There is no right way. There is no wrong way. There is your way, and you can only find it by listening to what you feel inside." He touched his chest just above his heart. Nikos looked at the two paths again. They were similar. Yet, the more he looked at them, the more he perceived a subtle difference, invisible to the eye but clear to the mind. "Choose," said his grandfather, "not to go somewhere, but to learn how to choose." The boy closed his eyes. He breathed in slowly. He let his breath become part of the forest. He didn't try to understand or reason. He just let the silence speak. And in the silence, a feeling emerged. Not strong, not urgent, a slight inclination, like the movement of a leaf, falling not because it is pushed, but because it is simply time. Nikos opened his eyes and set foot on the left path. He immediately felt a gentle peace wash over him, as if the road had welcomed him. Philon joined him without saying a word. They walked for a few minutes, letting the air slowly change around them. The path led to a bright clearing, where small butterflies moved with soft, almost meditative movements. "You chose well," said his grandfather finally. "Why?" asked Nikos. "Because you chose without haste and without fear of making a mistake." The boy sat down on the grass and looked at the sky opening above them. He felt a new kind of calm within him, not static, but conscious. "Remember this, Nikos," said Philon as he sat down beside him. "Choices don't define who you are. They define what you are ready to learn." The wind picked up lightly, as if in approval. The light moved gently on the leaves, creating reflections that seemed to guide thoughts to peaceful places. "What if I had chosen the other path?" asked Nikos. His grandfather smiled with ancient wisdom. "You would have learned something else, because every road teaches, every road leads, and every road has its own rhythm." They lingered a little longer in that clearing, letting the calm settle over them like golden dust. Time was in no hurry. Neither were they. Then they headed home, walking slowly, as if the path itself wanted to accompany them with gentle steps. Nikos felt that something in him was changing, not quickly, not obviously, but like a seed opening from within. And he understood that choosing is not running towards something. It is letting yourself be guided by what arises gently. That's all for today's story. If you enjoyed it and would like to hear more, please like and subscribe to the channel. Now, take a deep breath and relax. Good night.